write my own books in this space, and particularly working with MKAI on conversations like this.
Well, that's great. And what do you want to achieve today?
I think, as usual, what I like about these meetings when they work is we go beyond the generalities, we go beyond the sound bites that you can find on YouTube. That's why the chat's important. It's when you get those really nuggets of information, those penetrating questions. And, I would say I'm worried about AI. And so I'm interested when we look ahead to 2028, how I can be maybe less worried about AI.
Okay. Thank you. I'm looking forward to this greatly. So welcome Jerry and Jaisal to the screen. Jerry is our development director for MKAI, and Jaisal is our regional advocate, I should say, and speaker relationship manager. She also manages our XR relationships with organizations like XRSI. You're both very, very welcome. If you could say a quick hello, that'd be wonderful.
Hello.
That's a very quick hello.
Quick hello. Jaisal, would you like to?
Jaisal, how are you?
Yes. Hello, everybody. Looking forward to this event. And definitely, Paul has already started the conversation. I'm so intrigued.
Amazing. So I'm going to add some more folks to the screen. If perhaps one of the team could help me do that as well, that would be very, very helpful. Thank you so much. So what I think we should do today is, Jerry, I'm going to ask you to introduce our 4 invited knowledge sharers. But because sometimes your introductions are quite expansive, I thought if I could dive in between each one and say a bit of a hello, then we'd break up your monologues ever so slightly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a cunning plan. Let's see what happens. So, good morning, afternoon, or evening. Welcome, panelists, members of MKAI's global family, MKAI champions, Minds Collective members, and guests wherever you are, and friends. We hope we've put together another fascinating, insightful, and impact event for you. We really hope you enjoy it. Joining us in MKAI's global, whoops, my screen just went off. Joining us in MKAI's global lounge today, we have what we believe to be a truly incredible lineup of distinguished panelists from the UK, from New Mexico and New Jersey in the United States, and from India, all of whom feature on the MKAI's global list of our favorite people. So joining us, first of all, from New Mexico, United States, our first guest is a time traveler and rule bender, nerding out for good using data and science. She's an author, creative, ecosystem builder, facilitator, narrative builder, producer, and an applied futurist for governments, the military, higher education, industry, and NGOs. She's founder and producing director at Applied Futures Lab, founder at Laboratory 5 and co-builder of the Threat Casting Lab. She's on the board of directors of the People-Centered Internet, where she leads the I4J Global Workforce, Global Help Desk and Cool Abilities projects. And she's co-chair of the Human Wisdom Committee and is on the editorial board of the IEEE Planet Positive 2030 Global Sustainability Standards Initiative. She's the author of numerous works, including Threat Casting, How Light is Spent, and Thrive. Her experience transcends exploring the future of aerospace, AI, big data, biohealth, COVID-19, design fiction, digital currency, disabilities, education, gender equality, information warfare, dis and malinformation, shipbuilding, truth, information weaponization, the US Secret Service. I could go on for hours, as you probably realize. The United Nations single Sustainable Development Goals, to name just a few. We're beyond delighted that she's made time to be with us today. Please extend a very warm family MKAI welcome to the brilliant Cindy Kuhn.
Cindy, you're so welcome. How about that intro, huh?
Too much.
Too much. Try to get red tingling ears for our guests when we talk about them. So I hope we've achieved that today. But it's incredible the work you're doing, and we're so happy you're here.
Well, I'm really excited to be here. And I did just see in the chat, someone wanted to make sure you in fact said ship with a P building. And I just wanted to confirm that for our audience. In fact, yes, a P, not a T, friend.
Yeah, we get shit done here as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Although
it's exciting to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you. Jerry, who's next?
Okay. we're enormously proud to introduce our next panelist who joins us from the UK. He's a smartphone industry pioneer. He spent 25 years designing, implementing, and trailblazing the use of smart mobile devices. He's a renowned futurist writer, educator, consultant, and is the chair of London Futurists, where he's orchestrated over 300 thought-provoking meetings and launched the London's Futurist podcast, which is the world's largest future-focused meetup, boasting over 9,000 members. Bear with me momentarily. He's a triple first-class mathematics degree from Cambridge and an honorary doctorate in science. And my screen is jumping around, which isn't.
It's all right.
There we go.
Take your time.
Inside from Westminster University. He's been named one of the 100 most influential people in technology by T3. He's the executive director of Transpolitica, co-chair of the UK node of the Millennium Project, lead designer of Vital Syllabus, a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts, and sits on the boards of the IEET, Institute for Ethics and Emerging Technologies, and the LEV, Longevity Escape Velocity Foundation. His books include The Singularity Principles, Anticipating and Managing Cataclysmically Disruptive Technologies, Vital Foresight, Smartphones and Beyond, The Abolition of Aging, Sustainability, Superabundance, and Transcending Politics. Please welcome the beyond incredible David Wood.
Red tingling ears, I think that is the right description.
I have to say, Jerry,
David.
if that was on a t-shirt, it would go down to his feet.
Yeah.
Beyond.
Great to see you again, David.
Well, my pleasure. I'll see what I can do.
Who's next, Jerry? I need to write in the chat who you're talking about, as people have been asking.
So our next guest joins us from Pune, Maharashtra, India, and is the head of AI at Fujitsu India, a Fujitsu fellow and a global Fujitsu distinguished engineer. He's a noted mentor, industry and thought leader in the field of AI, and at Fujitsu he serves as the head of AI in Global Data Centers India. He acts as a global advocate AI for Fujitsu and frequently appears across key media, including Forbes, ET, TOI, Analytics India magazine, DataQuest, News, Tech Gig, IT Voice, Silicon India, TechGraph, and so on. It's an honor and privilege to invite you to meet and welcome Shrivastava Amit. He's a technology visionary with a deep understanding of technological needs and their impacts across various industries. He actively contributes as an advisor and is part of many world-class technology councils, computer societies, and national industry associations. His involvement extends to AI-related national programs for India. It's an honor and privilege to invite you to meet Amit Kumar Shrivastava.
Amit, you're very, very welcome. It's great to see you. I'll just ask you to unmute if that's okay, sir.
I'm saying thanks for inviting me here. I'm really looking forward to have a deep conversation probably, and I'm thinking to have a collective wisdom from here, like from all of you, and also from 2 cents from my side.
You're very, very welcome. Glad to have your presence here. So, by my calculations, you'll be introducing John next.
I will, and momentarily, I'll mention his name first, as requested. John C. Havens. Last but not least, our final panelist joins us from New Jersey, United States. He's the regenerative sustainability practice lead of the IEEE Standards Association, which is not easy to say, where he drives the strategy, coordination, and vision for the IEEE SA Planet Positive 2030 program, which produced the compendium document Strong Sustainability by Design, prioritizing ecosystem and human flourishing with technology-based solutions. This inspired the creation of the IEEE 7800 standard series focused on sustainability.
Wonderful, John.
He's also, bear with me momentarily, he's also the executive director of the IEEE Global Initiative on Ethics of Autonomous and Intelligent Systems, which was responsible for the creation and iteration of the bodywork known as Ethically Aligned Design, a vision for prioritizing human well-being. I've got a funny feeling I've already read this bit. Let me just jump forwards. Previously,
No worries.
he was the EVP of social media at PR firm Porter Novelli, led business development at Block Talk Radio, was a professional actor for over 15 years. He's author of the books Artificial Intelligence, Embracing Our Humanity to Maximize Machines, and Hacking Happiness, Why Your Personal Data Counts and How Tracking It Can Change the World. He currently has over 90 citations on ResearchGate and has written dozens of articles for outlets such as The Guardian, Quartz, IEEE Spectrum, and Mashable. He's especially interested in the spiritual aspects of AI, so I'm intrigued. Please welcome the remarkable John T. Havens.
Welcome, John.
Thank you.
It's a great pleasure to have you here, and hopefully you feel you're in good company, but also in diverse company today. We were talking about diversity, a friend and I, the other day, and how he was worried about being in the echo chamber, speaking to only people he liked. I said, well, they don't need to agree with you, but they can have a conversation with an open mind, a willingness to change, a willingness to listen. And you can have those things in common with people without necessarily agreeing with everything. And hopefully that's what we have today in this distinguished and esteemed panel. So, Jerry, thank you so much for letting us know who's here. We can top up in the chat anyway with a little bit more information, links, those kind of things as we go. I'm going to grab the reins back just for a moment, Paul, because we've got 145 people here, inclusive of ourselves. I think it would be sensible just to take a couple of minutes to just talk about MKAI, who we are, what we do, and maybe ways that people can get involved with us or work with us or have projects for us, those kind of things. Is that okay with you, Paul?
Yeah, I'm up for that.
You're very good at describing this. But could you give what we do?
Well, I think I'm going to describe what we did, Richard, what we did last week and what we did the week before, without this needing to sound like a commercial. But in some ways, I am advertising an ideology that's at the heart of MKAI. And I think it might root into some of John's comments later as well, which is that we are concerned about AI in the world. What's become the iconic news story about let's take a 6-month break just to breathe in. It's kind of very made me laugh when they were specific about 6 months. But there are concerns, and we are concerned about AI. And that concern isn't a negative thing. It's a concern where you kind of put your mind to something. And we want AI to benefit the world. And you can see around the world, from the UN to national governments, they're playing catch up to try and put some governance around this more or less successfully. But we are at the place where we know science fiction, when I was a child, has arrived in some form or another, and it can go in a number of different directions. And MKAI are enthusiasts about AI, and I'm drawn towards that. But we make sure that we underpin the training that we do, the conversations that we have with organizations to help them shape their AI future. Their strategy is very much infused with an ethical and a moral approach. And that's not so much on the line of right and wrong or good and bad. It's on the line of being awake or being asleep. It's on the line of being aware of the decisions we're making and the consequences they might have. And I think, Richard, that's at the heart of why we have the forums, because I think we believe that PowerPoint isn't going to take us forward in this space. Conversation is, inquiry is, dialogue is, and let's get that dialogue specific now. So we're not just in sound bites. And for me, that's what MKAI is about. So when you contact us, the conversations, whether you're in a service conversation with MKAI or just being part of this sort of conversation, it's all about an inquiry into how we do this for good, how we do this in ways that enhances humanity. And in a world, these have become cliches, but for me, every time I say them, they sound like I've said them for the first time. We have a climate change crisis. We have a world in conflict, and we potentially have unleashed machines on the world that could do the greatest harm or the greatest good. And so they are the sorts of conversations that MKAI is right at the heart of. We're curating them. And that's why I think, as somebody who was born in academia, I'm quite glad to be out working with organizations like MKAI that, as you know, I don't know if you take this as an insult, Richard, but I say we're a sort of development agency.
I think so, yeah. We're certainly keen to build capacity. And in terms of working with us, we're doing quite a lot of work in education, upskilling, courses, workshops around AI. So if that's your space, then love to hear from you, both at the college level in the UK, 16 to 18 and beyond in higher education. Paul, we're doing more and more of these development days as well, aren't we? Sort of taking this format, these forum format into organizations in public sector, third sector, private sector, to really generate the right kind of conversations internally. Could you say a little bit about that?
Yes, I think that, my favorite term, I think organizations that buy into the hype are caught in collusions of niceness and collusions of mediocrity, where critiquing AI is somehow some critique of capitalism generally, and is some sort of critique of success or failure, and it's not. It's that there are risks involved here and there are unknowns, and so the internal conversations we have are sometimes uncomfortable, they're disruptive, and sometimes what you do is you realize that you need to tear the page up you thought you'd written on and start again and ask some different questions. But we need to make sure that we go forward, whether we're tiny organizations, large organizations, in control of what is happening here.
Thank you so much. Hopefully it doesn't sound too vague, but
it did sound like an advert, Richard.
It's not intended to, but I think it is about time that we talked a little bit more
No,
about
some of it did sound a bit like the sort of crap that ChatGPT would have come up with. So I want to issue a public apology for any aspects of what I said that bear any relationship to that.
Well, we'll put a pin in this for now, but basically just DM me in the chat, or just write interest or something like this, so we can just start a conversation. If you're working in organization, public sector, education, that kind of thing, private sector, where you think these kinds of conversations, these kind of days would be useful, let's just start the conversation. So just give me a little nudge, and I'll get in touch and we can chat some more.
And Richard, do let me know if there's anything else I can help you with.
Thanks, Paul GPT. Great. Without any more for that conversation, let's dive into today. We've got an hour and 39 minutes on the clock. It's ticking down, and I want to make huge amounts of progress. So the topic, for those who've maybe forgotten, is we're talking about 5 years from now, looking into the future. What does particularly generative AI look like? What's our journey from there to now? What needs to happen in 2024 for us to be in the right places in 2028? I'm sure anybody who's reading the news will know that there's a huge amount of disparate information and disconnection around the world in the planning and the regulations and the innovation and what's going on in private sector and control and data. And it's quite an incredible piece. And so, David, I wonder, I mean, with so much that we could dive into, could you sort of give us a few minutes to steer this conversation, share a few of your thoughts in preparation for this, and then we will hopefully carry on your trajectory that you set today to look into this in more detail.
Thanks. So it's my view that the set of changes in the next 5 years is almost certainly going to be larger than most of us expect. It's not just going to be, oh, we've got a system that's 10% better or even twice as good by metrics from what we have today. We could be going into various phase transitions. It's like water changing from liquid into steam. There are potentially very large changes in the technology, and also in how the technology is impacting almost every area of our lives: education, healthcare, politics, what we do for work, what we do for leisure. The reason I think there will be so much change is because there's such a lot of momentum already built up. There are so many clever people who are already well knowledgeable about how these systems can be created. And there are large numbers of ideas for how to improve these systems. They are scaling up by the application of more data, more training CPUs. They are going to be combined together in new ways. And what's driving all of this is, first of all, there is a race to be commercially successful. The companies who are successful with these systems may become the most powerful companies in the world, maybe more powerful than any companies that have ever existed, or at least in the last 100 years or so. Secondly, there's a great race not to be left behind as a country. The countries that are in some ways in charge of the leading technologies will, in some sense, rule the world. So people aren't going to slow down. There is a geopolitical race, there are commercial races, and there are lots of ideas for how to improve the technology. And guess what? AI can be used to improve AI. It's just like people use software to help improve software with the debuggers and compilers and optimizers and profilers. In the same way, increasingly, people are using AI to check what models are doing and find better ways to make them more powerful. So that is the likely outcome. And whether that is very good or whether that is very bad depends on us. There was a question by Paul in the chat. He said, where are you? 1, very pessimistic about the future. 10, very optimistic about the future. I refuse to give a single answer to that because if I look ahead, there are scenarios, credible scenarios in which the world is very much better in just 5 years, and there are credible scenarios in which the world is very much worse in just 5 years. And it is in a balance. I do think we need to take control of what the technology companies are doing. I signed the letter calling for a pause. I accept that 6 months is not sufficient. I think we need to have more of a pause than just 6 months. It hasn't happened yet, although in reality, since that letter was announced in March this year, there has not been a significant step up in terms of GPT-5. That has not happened. But the letter itself did say, if there is no voluntary agreement, politicians need to step in, empowered by popular pressures. And that's happening. And in the UK, near Milton Keynes, not an MKAI meeting, but a meeting at Bletchley Park, organized by none less than the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, with representatives from around the world. They are putting on the agenda the safe use of what they call frontier AI. And I like that term. It's not saying it's going to be artificial general intelligence with all that that implies, but nor is it today's AI with all its strengths and weaknesses. It is an AI that we can see in the distance and which is very likely to be here. A wild west if we're not careful, one with huge opportunities and huge risks. And we have to figure out, are we going to get the benefit from it? That's what the UK government said they want. But above all, we're not going to get any benefits unless it is done in a safe way that thinks about benefits for all. So that's, I think, the broad landscape. I can talk later about why I am so confident that there will be step-ups in capability. But I think the biggest thing to know is that is likely to happen.
David, thank you so much. Cindy, are we in an arms race or a gold rush?
Well, first, I want to just address one thing for everyone that Paul said. So I am a futurist, and Paul said in the next 5 years, we predict. And so it's really important for me to start at the top to say, as a trained futurist, never prediction, all based on data. So when I look at this, a couple things I want to say is, if we're looking at the data, I would also reflect David's comment about where we are and is it going to be good or bad. I just want to say for a moment, it's not good or bad. It's the same, only the humans are driving things differently. So I am a ridiculous, off the charts optimist. I don't have pessimism in me. So from my lens, I don't think we're driving towards dystopia, first of all. I do not. And that is because we're the drivers. And there's too many of us humans who feel very strongly that we want to do something good. So the balance of the competition that's maybe leading this in a capitalistic way, there's enough of us watching. So because of that, I would also say, dystopia is lazy and we shouldn't spend time on it. It's really easy for a second grade child to develop a dark future. We don't need to spend time on that. We also don't need to spend time on imagining how can we make it so great that we build a utopia, because that also doesn't exist and it's very exclusive. So it's important, while we're thinking about all of this, that the notion to really pay attention to is inclusivity. So do I have fears and concerns about AI? Yeah, just like anyone else. Do I think it's going to be a total reckoning of destruction? No, I do not. And that is because the humans at this stage in the culture of the whole world have a connectivity and awareness that I do believe, based on data, not prediction, that we're going to choose a direction, just like signing this global letter, just like paying attention. Yep, dark things will happen because the humans are real weird and they do stuff we can't plan ahead on. But will we be a total destruction due to this? No. Will we have incredible areas of our lives enhanced and ease up on some tasks we've been doing for a long time that we will no longer do as humans? Yeah. And then what does that leave on our hands is time. And then what are we going to do with that? That's the piece that I find the most curious, is the humans. So that's my immediate, is never prediction, always data, and humans.
And humans are relatively predictable, right?
Oh, right. Yeah.
John, it'd be great to pull you into this conversation as well. You don't call yourself a futurist, so have you got more opportunity to speculate, do you think, today?
Well, if it's okay, since you were kind enough to ask what I want to speak about, and I wanted to talk about spirituality. I'm a musician, and for me, a lot of times these amazing talks, and thank you again, if I'm in a room with Cindy, like, I'm not worthy, and Marisa Zalabak is on the phone, David Woods, I'm a big fan of your work, you've been leading this space for years, so thank you again. But just for fun, for me, a lot of these conversations, we tend to focus on our intellect, but humans, we have emotions and faith and music. So if it's okay, what I'm going to do, because I'm also a ham, I used to be an actor, if you'll allow me, and I guess you might turn the camera off, but otherwise you'll allow me. I'm a huge Monty Python fan, and someone talked about Monty Python in the chat. The chat is incredible, by the way. Please capture the chat.
It's lighting up, yeah.
And in 2018, I wrote a version of Monty Python's Philosophers Song. I would like to share as my opening prediction, or my opening thing. So here we go. Hope you enjoy it. Please get coffee if you don't want to listen. I'm also going to do the Australian accent because that's what they do. Oh, Turing's test caused wide unrest. Is Siri a machine or a silicon mistress? Minsky surmised we're mechanically comprised. Man and bot are the same. We don't need your stupid test. Jean Searle replied, it's a Chinese room inside. It's a program, not consciousness. The singularity, meanwhile, says Ray Kurzweil, gives us 30 years at best. There's nothing deep mind cannot rule by observation and brute force. Algorithmically speaking, they're the techno-Trojan horse. Oh, don't forget, this is 2018. Watson's recent spree on Jeopardy brought us cognitive computing on national TV. Elon Musk has some issues with the trust of existential risk combined with technocratic lust. Oh, Stephen Hawking, as of late has started squawking. Colleagues, let's be gents and align our goals to provably controlled super intelligence. It's easier to build stuff without ethics, yes, it's true. But we need to do it now or humanity is screwed. Thank you very much.
I wasn't expecting that, John, but what a treat.
Good. That's a good Monty Python thing, and I love Britons. I'm an Anglophile. But I did want to say that because, and thanks for that. That was 2018. I can pretty easily change the lyrics to things like Chat GPT. And I use the word spiritual as kind of my opening salvo, because I'm really trying to identify in these conversations, since I've been privileged to be in them since like 2013 and 2014, before I wrote my book, Artificial Intelligence, what often doesn't get said. So here's some things I'll throw out. Colonialism, right? The nature of how people went to other places and said, we're taking over, sometimes by killing them. The decolonial movement in AI is very exciting to me because language, where it's only English, through intention or not, means you aren't listening to other people, literally, and you're not having their culture. Thousands of indigenous languages not being included in things means that any conversation we talk about prediction right now today, those languages not being included in a world that might be a virtual reality, et cetera, only, those cultures will be gone. Women, trans folks, young people, anyone that's not involved in a conversation where AI is created, by and large, that means the systems, and I like to say AI systems because that incorporates the data, won't be included. And then where there's a sort of tacit, and I'm not anti-Western, I want to take Western and extend it because of wonderful opportunities I have in leading a lot of IEEE work with people globally, where we produced this big report saying ethically aligned design. The first version of the report was only folks from North America, Europe, and the UK. And we got a ton of great feedback saying, wonderful work, it's only Western. At the time, I didn't know what that meant. I wasn't evil. It wasn't my intention to not keep people, but I did feel a little bit like, oh yeah, maybe there are other ethical, pragmatic ethical considerations, which is about design, which we need to include in this work. And it's such a gift when you start to learn about Confucianism or Shinto traditions. And Shinto traditions are things like animism, you know, thinking that an object or believing that it has a spirit. I put in the chat here earlier, not to be disrespectful, but to point out that when a chatbot assistant says, hi, I am a chatbot assistant, I am affected spiritually. It affects my mental health because I know that designers who I trust, leading minds from around the world for the past 5 or 10 years, that is called anthropomorphism. It's because a designer says, I'm going to write I or we pronouns and then put it in these positions. It doesn't mean the people using the tools and anyone using these tools, I use them, you know, it's just an awareness that disclosure saying, hey, everyone, you're about to read my chatbot that says I or we. That's all you need, because then people can go, yeah, I know. And then they can go from there. But the point is that disclosure is also spiritual. It's a sign. It's like going into a movie theater, the lights go down. It's a way of saying to everybody, you're about to see a movie, you're safe. Our conversations where we don't include the human, whether it's someone singing a silly parody song with a guitar that needs tuning, or someone talking about a spiritual tradition, these are other parts of our humanity that if they're not honored, then we can't really, you know, that's happening now, right? So the reason I like to focus on the present is to just acknowledge that I think there's not just the opportunity, but the need to say, how can we equip ourselves with love and kindness, especially since we're facing pandemics like a 1 in 4 loneliness epidemic around the world. Tools or messages or narratives that say humans suck are not gonna help us move forward in the world. I don't think humans suck. I think where we are, quote, messy or whatever else, that's a synonym that should not be pejorative. It also means we're lovely. And most importantly, we need each other. That's the loneliness that can be helped by technology. I can tell you 48 tools that AI is using to help soldiers and things like PTSD. Wonderful. But going to them first without looking at ourselves and loving others is a present that we need to address for the future.
John, I'm glad you said that, and I'm sure Paul's got some comments as well. I don't think we suck, but you just look at the situation that we're in, you know, through the amazing developments that we've had, we've managed to get our numbers up from a few thousand back during the Ice Age to a few billion to now upwards, moving towards 10 billion, which is one thing. We've engineered that. The second thing is obviously we've interacted with this planet in a huge way, almost in every way. And we don't know the implications of what we're doing. We don't manage or monitor the implications of a new building or a new road or whatever, because it's fiendishly hard. Now, we're not going backwards. We're not going to leave the Earth alone. We know that, for good or for bad. So we're only going forward. So you have to imagine a future where we are monitoring the planet in an incredibly detailed way, because we have to, because that's the level that we're interacting with it and the way that we're affecting it. And so the tools are coming on board now that allow us to take another step towards that, which is the inevitable. It has to be. Unless we walk away, we have to do these things. They're incredibly hard. So of course, we're not bad. The challenge is magnificent. And we're now potentially getting the tools to step up to that challenge. Paul?
couple of things just to throw out. The chat's going a bit wild here, so it will be good at some point quite soon to bring some of that in, Richard. But 2 points. One is, David, you hinted at this, I think, in something that you said, which is as we head towards 2028, we come into a phase where the human and the machine interface, our prompting of AI, still happens, but AI starts to prompt itself. And that takes me to the second point that I think is very much about what John's talking about around colonialism, although that's not the main point for me here. And that is simply in the education sector, I became aware, because I'm getting to see it more, that a teacher was teaching a group of students how to prompt ChatGPT. That's the most popular still rendition of generative AI that's out there at the moment, and the household brand name. And well-intentioned, the teacher tried to correct the student, and there was a group of them. And what happened was the teacher set them a task, which might have been to do a bit of research. And what happened was the student started just to prompt ChatGPT, and they typed something, got some outcome, typed some more, got some output, typed some more. And the teacher kind of stopped and a bit parentally said, no, no, no. What you need to do is prompt it at the start. You need to have a vision and a plan for what you're after, and basically taught their preferred method, which was the mega prompt, which we all see now, and they're going to be sold as products. The mega prompt that will get you the brilliant, letter that you want to write or the report that you want to write. And that mega prompt was half a page long, and the idea is to kind of get it right first time and just finesse it afterwards. And in the conversation afterwards, because it was a kind of developmental activity, I pointed out firstly that depending on how you were brought up and what culture you came from, we know that artists, when they paint, some essentially mega prompt. What they do is they go for a walk, they create their vision, they create tiny little sketches, and then they commit to the whole painting, having done all the prep work first. And we know it produces great and terrible art. Equally, we know that artists, and they are brought up, also go step by step. They they go in one go. They put as much paint on the paper as possible and finesse afterwards. They kind of just keep going iteratively. They're very different approaches. One is you need to know in advance, you plan and you get your prompt right. The second one is we do it iteratively. We kind of improvise. We know that produces great and terrible art. Culturally, they're different. Some cultures, because of the nature of the resources they've had around them, have to pick up as they go and build slowly. Others, it's very much, particularly where there's danger, they have to take everything they've got with them before they commit. Both are fine, both work. And actually, the one that you need to have it all gathered in advance, the mega prompt, is actually quite Western and colonial, I would suggest. It's stuff like that that leads me to just kind of throw out two things. One is, if AI starts to prompt AI more, replacing prompting we might have done with each other, what do we gain or lose from having handed over whatever those potentially sacred interactions were with each other? The feeling of that creative journey, because it becomes less visible. And what we have to do is prompt from outside in, or mega prompt. And then part of the prompt might be to say to AI, yeah, and when you've written the first draft of the essay, go and talk to that AI app to check it academically. So you kind of get that going on. And the second one, which I think is also key, is what do we lose as artisans? And what's the new skill set? So it's not necessarily a negative thing. What are the skills that human beings are going to need? A, to prompt AI from outside in, and B, to kind of deliberately empower AI to prompt itself, and we step back. They seem to be key things to me, and there are definitely spiritual or moral questions underpinning all of those things.
Well, thanks. I saw David's hand went up, and then Cindy's, and then let's come and hear from Amit after that, if that's okay. David.
Two quick comments in reply to Paul. Prompting is changing. We are going to have a new version of DALL-E, which is by OpenAI, coming out in October next month, called DALL-E version 3. And it promises to be much more intuitive about how people can use it to get sophisticated answers. And the reason it claims to be better is it's prompting ChatGPT. So you interact with it, it talks to ChatGPT, and then it comes up with a prompt which it feeds to its internal engine. So whatever you think we're learning as prompt engineers, and some people are saying there's a new career, I think these skills are going to be changed rapidly because the systems are going to be better at working out through a few questions back to us what we're trying to do. And it will end up with pictures that more often reflect what we wanted to create. So this is a moving field, and our skills in prompting today will soon need to be updated. But in terms of, is it appropriate to try and get everything right first time, or is it appropriate to experiment? And I've always been a fan of agile, which is, well, you can't expect to get it right first time. That's too difficult. So you should experiment and figure out the answer. But there are circumstances in which that is too dangerous. Another way to describe that is, this is the Silicon Valley principle of move fast and break things. Don't be afraid to break things. Don't be afraid to fail, because it's through failures you're going to learn and you can pick yourself up and do great things as a result. That assumes you can pick yourself up from an experiment that's gone wrong. But there are increasingly such powerful technologies that we're experimenting with that we won't be able to pick ourselves up. If we are experimenting, for example, with gain of function research, which is ways of modifying pathogens to make them more virulent, if we are using AIs in that combination, we could talk more about that later. There's a whole lot of things to be said on that topic. There is the risk if we get that experiment wrong and the pathogen escapes, a lab leak, which has happened many times in the past, and it's still an open question whether it happened in Wuhan with COVID, but there are uncontroversial instances of lab leaks happening in the past, which killed thousands of people. Well, we might have a lab leak that kills billions of people. In that case, it's much more important to get things right ahead of time, which means a new approach to safety. So I think we can't just go ahead in an agile, happy-go-lucky experimentation phase. That's all right for many cases, but there are certain things now that we're going to need a higher caliber of safety than ever before. And that's difficult, and it's what we need a heck of a lot more focus on.
Can I just come back on that very quickly, David? Just some of the evidence from experiments that mega prompting uses far less carbon footprint.
Well, that's an important consideration. I don't deny that. On the other hand, I expect the carbon footprint of these systems is going to come down quite rapidly, because what people are doing, they're figuring out much more efficient ways to get the same results. This is not a one-way street with these systems becoming more and more powerful. On the contrary, we are learning from neuromorphic computing, which is studying how the human brain manages to do so much on just 30 watts. And people are figuring out a whole number of things. The three main approaches to neuromorphic computing. One is using sparse networks as opposed to dense networks. One of them is using variable power. One of them is using fewer floating point precision where appropriate. And in all these ways, there is likelihood that our future systems will not only be more powerful, they will use less power. That's two different uses of the word power.
Cindy.
So I just wanted to bring this piece that is really about permission space back on over to the humans, because this conversation is so important when it comes to humans. We are talking now about the faster lane that's running across the top, which is about people in the know who are already engaged in AI, generally don't have fear, are embracing it and excited about it. So if you imagine that speed highway, we're just running across the top. Down here on the lower walkway, we have a lot of humans who haven't even believe they haven't touched AI. Of course they have in their life, but personally engaged, directed in AI. So what's really interesting for me is, how do we let that highway run and then with really keen intention drop down threads for people to hold on to? Because that difference between the mega prompting and the slow sentences trying to get there is the difference between skill too. So, you know, you can, as you say, go on to online and you can buy a prompt cookbook, and you can have those for things like writing your press releases and things you need to do in your businesses. But how do we make sure we create an intentional ramp so that when folks slowly arrive in this space, they're not greeted with an 800-page manual, that says the only way to get in now is to feed in this mega data. So when I get nervous about the takeover of AI, it really has more to do with that colonial feeling of those who got there first are just running so fast that they're not remembering to put in the structural pieces that are needed for everybody who's coming behind. So my biggest thought is, while we're doing all of this, is just having everyone who's doing it put some mechanism in place, even for yourself, to say, what am I doing as a personal responsibility to say, how am I inviting even one person in? How am I doing something so that I'm collecting a shared method to invite? So I just want to insert these humans back in. So while we're all running on this highway that we're really comfortable with because we live in this space, there's a lot of those 8 billion people who have never touched a thing. And if we get too, heavy in how to even get on, that bus pass becomes too much to lift.
John, I want to come to you in 1 second, and hopefully this won't take away from what Cindy's saying at all. But Amit, if you could give us a flavor from your perspective, what's actually coming? What do you see down the road in these technologies that you're talking about with clients, that you're doing internally, that excites you, that is leveling up and causing people like Cindy and others to have these sort of thoughts? Can you sort of set that scene for us?
Sure, thanks.
I'll just pop you off mute again, Amit, if that's okay. I don't know why that happened. Apologies.
Okay. So the observation that I'm making working in the industry and interacting with the lot of industry associations as well as with governments, and based upon my experience for last 16-17 years in AI only, what I observed that AI is getting democratized now. So when we talk about chat GPT or when we talk about any other tool right now, so it is providing accessibility to normal users. So think about like 5 years, probably, let's say, think about 2020 or probably before even 2021 or 2022, I would say. People used to talk about AI, right? So, but nobody was using AI as a first-hand experience. We see the chat GPT now, it is empowering people. Like, even a shopkeeper or even people in the remote village is now using chat GPT. So somehow it is democratizing the tool, and the tool is nothing but an AI powered solution. So probably if you see from here now till 2028 or probably after that as well, I'm seeing the democratization is happening now. This is not only on the individual perspective, but also within the software systems. The integration is basically, going to get accelerated. I think David and John and Cindy talked about, a lot of examples, use cases, and where it can be applied. I'm not getting into that. But what I'm trying to say is that this is really providing power to end users as well as company to try new things. Probably 2 or 3 years back, if you see, we used to say that every company will be a software company, like any vertical. If you talk about manufacturing, healthcare, or any other vertical, people used to say about that the company will be ultimately a software company, probably in next few years. If you see AI now, like how AI is evolving, probably in next 5 to 7 years, you'll see that every company will be AI or AI powered company. This is what I am seeing based upon my experience and the kind of, and also this is because of the factor called FOMO, fearing of missing out. Many people are trying this AI stuff, and then they are just doing the prototypes only. They're not getting into the production. That's a separate point of discussion. But what I'm understanding here, that people are at least talking about this particular technology, and that's a very great sign. This is a very good sign. I also feel.
Can you just pause that thought? I want to hear the next piece as well. But just to clarify what you're saying about these companies becoming AI companies, are you talking about them developing, or are you talking about them getting APIs into large language models like OpenAI's? What's the picture that you're painting there?
So see, when I talk about that, every company will be AI or AI powered company. So they are going to use AI powered tool, whether it is open source tool or some APIs. Because see, ultimately, if you want to democratize this technology, you need APIs. You need developers to work on the solution, right? You do not need data scientists all the time to work on AI solution, right? So you need people like those who are working into HR, those who are working into, let's say, admin, those who are a developer. They also need to know how to interact with AI, how to use AI tool, right? So these are important aspects of the democratization. And if you see from this perspective, the low code, no code integration or the low code, no code application will improve, or maybe you'll see more low code, no code application with respect to AI. You'll see more open source softwares and tools available. You will see more UI interface with respect to AI powered tools like you were saying in GPT. And I think chat GPT now they are including the daily as well, and then the voice command also is getting into that. So the voice command, generated voice command or generative AI powered voice command is also something that you are going to see, in 2028 or probably before that as well. So there are a lot of areas I can talk about probably, but I think it's an open discussion. I'm just stopping here and then we can take it from here.
Yeah, I just want to pick up on a few of those points. And John, of course, I know your hand is up. And if it's something that we're moving past, just jump in. Don't let me miss an important comment. If it's something slightly different, then obviously we can come to it. So, I mean, you're talking about interacting differently there as well, aren't you, by 2028, maybe earlier? At the moment, these are obviously largely text-driven. We're talking a lot about ChatGPT, but obviously we're generating music and art and video, and other forms of slide decks, these kind of things at the moment. But there's a little bit of a less focus on the chat part at the moment than there is the sort of prompt part. Perhaps we're moving more, but like you say, with voice to more of that chat-based discussion. I think we see this in Snap's integration of AI into Snapchat, where you're really able to have more of an AI buddy, an AI friend. Is that going to become the norm over the next few years, do you feel?
Is it for me, Richard?
If you don't mind, yeah, although always happy to hear other opinions.
Okay.
Yeah, so just with you for a bit longer, if that's okay. So the normality to have more of a companion in the form of AI encroaching into much more of your life, perhaps, than we see now. Is that the sort of things we see on the horizon?
See, if you ask me, I will just add very quickly. I'm seeing this is growing for sure. You are going to see more personalized way of voice command. If you just discuss this from a generative AI perspective, the personalized way is going to get increased from here. And this is where business is also targeting. They want to provide personalized solution, at least in the current scenario when you are people are asking for their specific like people are asking for solution that basically caters their thought process as well, right? So whether it is retail or any other vertical domain, they are looking for personalized solution. And why this is happening? Because you already have made a lot of noise around AI these days. Even if you see a simple ad where you are just using a data analysis, you are projecting it as an AI powered solution in that, right? So people are hearing that word AI powered or AI based solution. Now they have that interest generated in their mind. I'm just providing the psychological part of it. People, whether they understand AI or not, that's a separate thing, but they want technology that is AI powered technology. And that's generating user thought process, like they want to purchase something that is powered by emerging technologies like AI, and at the same time the business is cashing on that. So this is what I feel in a nutshell.
I think you're right, and Verena's talked about the challenge, particularly when children are doing that. But I think that's a future that we will see by 2028. If you haven't looked at it, have a look what's going on in Snapchat. The OpenAI integration is mandatory. You can't get rid of it. A lot of our younger people use Snapchat, and it's there. It's pervasive. And Cindy, I see your hand going up as well. I won't speak for long because I want to hear from you and John and others. But I'll just mention again, I was sitting there having dinner in London not too long ago, saw a couple opposite me, and they didn't speak to each other the entire meal. Now, I don't know if that's their third date or their 300th date, but they didn't say a word to each other. They were on their phones, as you might expect. But I'm pretty sure they were not on ChatGPT or Bard or anything like that. They were just chatting with friends or playing games or whatever they were doing on their phones, which is already more interesting than the partner in front of them. So when we switch on these AI buddies in the way that Amit's describing, we can imagine that we're going to turn the volume up on this. And now for younger people, obviously the parents are influential, the teachers are influential. I think now we get this AI buddy that's going to be hugely influential. And John, David, you mentioned earlier about, and I want to get into this more, about these companies who are going to be more successful, richer than anything we've ever seen before. When you think about the power of that influential AI buddy, particularly on a young person, not only do we not really know what's happening on what they're chatting about, we don't really know the intentions or the influence from an organization that owns this, which is likely to be a private company. It's likely to have shareholders. It's likely to have to need to make a higher profit every year. And those needs are going to flow into those intentions, are going to flow into those chats. And there's a lot of data to work with. And hopefully we can touch on this, David, a little bit later. John, I've spoken enough. Take over. I'm going to hit the unmute button if you don't mind.
Thank you.
Then to Cindy.
So many good comments. So first of all is, of course, we know the intentions right now today. I worked in social media at a PR firm about 10 years ago when Twitter was first being born. I was at South by when Twitter was launched. And I had a joke with my friends in PR, no sales funnel ends in abstinence, period. There's no brand that's going to be like, let's create awareness about our brand. And you looked at it and you don't want to buy it. That's cool. You can't do that. That's not the job. The job is to get people to buy your things. This does not mean we have to define intention as good or evil. These are binary terms because don't really help us. But Google's an advertising company. If you look at how they make money, we call them a search company. They're an advertising company. It's how they make revenue. And when I wrote my last book, Artificial Intelligence, I dug into that whole, Google said they don't want to be evil thing. If you look at what they actually were talking about, it's not about, whatever the algorithms or whatever doing something. It's the nature of how productivity is prioritized above everything else. That's what they were saying they didn't want to, quote, be evil about. And want to point this out in terms of like where the world is now. And I've been studying economics and GDP for years. Where any company has to be focused on shareholder value by law, then in one sense, a lot of conversations for me, and again, respectfully in general, but it's easier to sort of take some of the emotions out and say like, well, what happens? When I was an EVP of a PR firm, a client, we were working, doing great stuff. They had good intentions. They wanted to help people. They personalized this and that. But then every quarter was our margins increasing in general. That was the number one metric that key performance indicators, KPIs, went to. Is this evil? I'm going to move that aside and say, what does it mean the definition of societal success has become, period? Productivity in general and exponential growth. Now I say exponential growth because we all got to make money. There's nothing else making profits. But when the first thing that's prioritized is we have to make as much as we can, as fast as we can, in one sense, that does become ethical and moral because you're making decisions based on things that do one thing kind of myopically. Whereas, for instance, the work that I'm leading, that Cindy's a part of, and Marissa, who's on here, are part of, when you prioritize ecological flourishing and human well-being, this is actually innovation, both for AI and everything else. Here's why. When we talk about innovation and we go to companies in general, and I'm sure I'm wildly misinformed, I look forward to being corrected and educated because I love learning in general. But there's a couple of things. The intellectual property issue around things like ChatGPT and these LLMs, right? I'm a former screen actor. I'm still a Screen Actors Guild actor. And the Writers Guild strike, if you haven't followed that, there's been some victories around that strike where basically human people creating stuff are saying, we want, money for what we're doing, being very simplistic. This is a big deal because our data that makes up the vapor of who we are, our spirit, as it were, in one sense, what will personalization become when we are so directed to say purchase things that we become a demographic where we lose agency. So I put in the link a woman named Dr. Tinmet Gebru, who's a hero of mine. I hope to meet her someday. She had a wonderful interview with a guy I respect a lot named Ethan Zuckerman. And she has this interview called Chat or LLMs are Bad Science, right? The thing is, two things can happen at the same time. And so, Amit, I loved your comments. And so I'm saying this respectfully to what you were saying and what a lot of people know, myself included. The first time I used ChatGPT, it had this sort of magical quality to it. Now I'm a writer. I wanted to be mad at it, but I was like, this is really cool. It is. While it's cool today, and it's not about putting anything down, it's things that are known. And Tim McGibber does it a lot better than I do. But the quote, bad science is things like hallucinations, which are just a fun word for error. They're just errors. Pulling in stuff from large language models means automatically you're pulling data sets that have racist or sexist language. Is that someone's fault? Again, I'm moving those things aside to say what is here today. These tools, if they use those language models, if they aren't prioritized to eradicate those things, then every single person doing every single query as we speak is being informed in some subtle, unknown way with these racist tropes. Our human agency is right now being changed. And I made the point about the anthropomorphic thing because anyone under 18 or 19 who doesn't kind of know that machines may or may not be real, they have not been informed with an agency to make a decision for themselves if they want to choose that robots or AI are real, however they would define real. I'm not here to tell them what their faith-based decisions should be. And it's faith. I'm using the word faith in this community because it's faith. Mm-hmm. It's not fair to say that person's Jewish, that person's Christian, that person worships, Islam, whatever. You can't talk in this conversation, but let's talk about how machines are real right now. That's also faith because technically I know the experts in the world. I did a song in 2018 about them. I follow it daily. It's my bread and butter. There are no experts that today say AGI is here right now today. Over there, that machine is Bob, right? So that means it's speculation. Doesn't mean that it's bad science, but it's informed speculation. So just a couple of other things, and I wanted to, I'm not picking on you. You said very cool things that I think about all the time. I don't know what the word democratization means anymore. Because when democracy was born in the United States, it was on the backs of slaves, on the back of First Nations people after a genocide. There were no women in the room, So democracy, okay. And then secondly, 2 books ago, I wrote a book on personal data. We do not have democracy in the United States with regards to access to our data, not ownership, access to our data. And the same tools that Dr. Gebru talks about much more eloquently than I do are robbing us of our agency and not really letting us understand how we use data. That is right now today. And ultimately, I want to end on a positive note, because I want to honor other answers and stuff. The opportunity is to say, why are we prioritizing ultimately something that says productivity and profits are the number one thing when really, if we want to talk equity, it is just a fact. And I'm angry, but I'd rather not just rage about it. I want to think about the joy. Is to say these systems, by and large, it's why the Anthropocene definition came into being. Human-caused climate change from the, quote, industrial era. Let's stop naming things Industry 5.6. I don't want industry anymore, in one sense. I want the planet and people, for 8 billion people for the next 20, 30, 40 years to be okay. Making money, of course. But I say all this because if the ultimate metrics of success are productivity and exponential growth, the science from the IPCC scientists in terms of climate, from the Club of Rome, from any, especially places not in the, quote, developed world. I don't like that term, developed nations, because in terms of climate, the US caused most of the pollution that's kicking around the world, right? That's not developed. That's harmful.
No, I mean, this period of intentional, very damaging hedonism, I think, is going to be how we're known in history, I think, personally. Paul, I see your hands up. Do you want to jump in, though?
Yeah, I think I'd just like to try and blow up the conversation. Then we can go to Cindy. And Cindy, what I say may blow up what you were going to say, or if not, please do go ahead and say it. But what I want to do...
Sorry, I thought you were going to me. I'm going to wait on my question. I actually think when it's time, Paul, go to because I think he has a direct response to John. So I will hold
before we go, I just because of time, I just wanted to just to come in here for a moment and just to note, perhaps it's a sign of how we've all, even everybody on this call, have been groomed around ChatGPT and generative AI and large language models. And I was actually going to address this to David, who's also got his hand up, so I'm hoping you might pick this up. But speaking with an academic hat, ChatGPT and Midjourney and creating cool videos and a lot of that represents about 5% of the value and activity of AI in the world. Before this, this product broke publicly in January, AI had been going for a long time. AI is at the heart of the many of the factories of this world, of developments in 3D printing, developments in all kinds of different technology. AI is not just large language models and ChatGPT, far from it. So as we look towards 2028, I guess the leading question, maybe for David, and then please do come in the rest of the panel, is can we take our attention just for a moment, not because it's not important, but perhaps because it is the most publicly groomed part of AI, which is generative AI, to look at all the other AI in the world that represents so much of it, the carbon footprint of it, the benefits of it, the excitement of it. We had Errol on the call, I don't know if he's still here, who was doing really interesting AI projects years ago in banking. So what about all the other AI, David, the AI that is really the backbone of AI, the stuff that's been being brought into computer integrated manufacture, into big data, into all kinds of stuff?
Okay.
Where does that head
So
in
here's
2028?
here's the most important thing to know. The revolution that has enabled such steps forward with large language models, which has made people say, wow, I didn't realize AI could be so clever. That same revolution, it's called self-supervised learning. It uses a new algorithm called transformers. It allows AI to learn from data without humans having to go in and annotate it first. So the first wave of deep learning from 2012 forwards, which Jeff Hinton and Ilya Sutskever and Alex Khrushchevsky led from the University of Toronto, was based on humans having annotated data. This second wave of deep learning is based on the transformer model developed inside Google in about 2017, 2018. It is not just enabling things to learn language models, it is enabling things to teach themselves chemistry. It's enabling them to teach themselves energy systems. So the same insights are being applied to revolutionize the discovery of drugs. And we want that. I'm not going to sit back and say, oh, we want to go back to a simpler life. No, I want better drugs to solve cancer. Too many people that I know in the last year have died at the age of 50 or a bit older because of incurable cancers. I am not prepared to say, hey, they had a good life. That's fine. It's a shame I can't see them anymore. It's a shame their family can't see them anymore. I say, no, I think we're going to hurry up and use AI to cure these diseases, and it will be the same technologies, the transformers, the self-supervised learnings that are going to accelerate the solutions there. Accelerate solutions for clean energy as well. You know, we have been promised for 70 years energy that is too cheap to meter. Well, we could have that finally with the AI systems that can govern our fusion systems. We are closer to safe, clean fusion energy than ever before. I want that. So that is indeed the positive things that are within our grasp. But I have to come back to the very important points that John was making, which is that even though you think you're a good guy, even though you are pursuing what you think is right and safe, you can end up having some terrible consequences. We're talking about whether Google are motivated to help people or whether they are motivated to boost their stock price. Let's not talk about Google for a moment. I could talk about NASA or BP or Union Carbide, all of whom were involved in terrible disasters. I do want to talk for a couple of minutes about Boeing, because Boeing were a wonderful American company for a long time, focused on safety. They had a wonderful track record of putting engineering first, and their planes were about the safest in the sky. But what happened in recent years, they had a series of disasters that some of you may know about. They had a new design called the 737 MAX, which they hurried into existence. Why? Because they were losing in a competitive battle against the European-backed Airbus. So they took an existing model, the 737, which was very safe, and they made it larger. They made a more efficient engine, which used less fuel. So that was surely a good thing. But in so doing, they introduced some instabilities in how that thing would fly. So they said, you know what, we're going to help the poor pilots who might occasionally end up with an unstable flying airplane. The same way that some of our cars occasionally beep at us if they think we're about to hit something. And if we don't stop or slow down, it will actually jam on the brakes. Well, the same sort of system was built into the 737 MAX. In certain circumstances, it would push the nose down to avoid the perceived risk of the airplane stalling. But there was a bug in that system, and some of the engineers at Boeing knew there was a bug, and they protested about it, and they were told, oh, the chances of this bug happening in real life are so slim and so unimaginable, we are going to fix it in due course, but let's hurry up and release this software now. And Boeing had changed because Boeing was no longer so focused on safety. They had had a corporate merger with McDonnell Douglas based in Chicago rather than Seattle, and they were more alert to keeping the share price high. So what happened? Plane flying in Ethiopia, it was perceived by the software to be at risk of stalling, so it pushed the front down, and the pilots were wrestling with it. They said, how can we stop this? How can we stop this? And they couldn't. And the plane crashed so deep into the ground, body parts were flown all over, everybody died. Boeing denied that they could be responsible. They blamed the human pilots. They said, these Ethiopians, they didn't have enough training. We Americans, we would never have such. And exactly the same thing happened. I probably got the timing the wrong way around, but the same thing happened with Indonesian air flight. They fell into the same system. So what the risk is here is that good companies with a great track record will be pushed into a different set of incentives and motivations. The safety vision will be deprioritized, and in pursuit of what people perceive to be a safer, more economical engine with more passengers being transported will end up in a situation where the humans could not override that system. And what is at stake here is not just a few hundred people, sadly, losing their lives by these airplane crashes. It's if we plug AI too deeply into the infrastructure of our society, whether it's the military infrastructure, communications infrastructure, or even the health infrastructure. And if it goes wrong in the same way because of a rush, not because of particularly bad people, but because of people who are just in a hurry to avoid missing out on something they believe is important, then we could end up with a whole planet being in a situation of these terrible distressed pilots, which you can hear in the voice cockpit recording. They were wrestling with AI. They didn't call it AI, it was an MCAS, maneuvering control airplane system or whatever. They couldn't override it. And we humans might be in that same case fairly soon, unless we prioritize much more highly an attention to, first of all, safety, but also how to avoid these dangerous, unproductive races. And this is not going to happen just by a few people saying on this call, I wish it were better. It's going to require changes in politics. So I say to everybody here, if you're serious about this, it's not sufficient just to virtue signal and say, I think AI should be fairer. I think AI should be more equitable. No, you have to get involved and change the political mindset. You have to alert your political leaders that there is, first of all, a wonderful opportunity, but second, a terrible threat here. And we have to get the conversation on that. And if we fail to do it, then by 2028, we may all be in a downward plunge that we can't pull out of because we failed to be smart enough early enough.
And David, just to be clear, that generative AI, certainly in its current form, it's being very hyped up, is going to be a piece of that puzzle, but it's certainly not the largest piece. We sort of need to get over this a bit, but AI is so much more and is in so many more different aspects already of our society that in some ways generative AI is a bit of a distraction from that.
No, not a distraction. Generative AI is equivalent to the intuitive part of the human mind. When we make decisions, it's often our intuition is showing us patterns and it's leading us to conclusions. That's what generative AI does. It somehow notices patterns and it suggests solutions. It's true, our systems won't just be generative AI. The systems increasingly are combinations, just like the human brain is a combination of fast thinking and slow thinking, to quote the Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman. We have a rational part and this intuitive part, and if we get that relationship wrong, we end up in trouble, all sorts of trouble. In the same way, we're going to have to cater with systems that have large generative AIs doing the intuitive thinking, and we're going to have rational systems on top, ensuring that that doesn't lead us badly astray.
David, thank you. I know there's been hands in the air. Peter
We've got
Scott's,
Amit Kumar's been had his hand up for a long time.
Sure, yeah. I just put Peter on the screen so we don't forget about him. Although I'm sure it's to do with this, but Amit, go on. We can't do everything at once.
I think let me just keep it very simple. See, I will just stick to the point, like, because we are talking about generative AI 2028. But as I think David touched based on some other areas as well, like self-supervised and how it is contributing, and then transformers and so on.
Generative AI
And
is self-supervised learning.
yeah.
They're
So
not different things.
that's the underlying technology that we are
Let's be
talking
clear.
about. So I'm just going to elaborate more on that from that perspective I'm talking. See, my intention was not to talk technology here in depth, like but I think people are talking about technology, so let me start from that perspective as well. See, I will start with, John was making some point around democracy, and I think I had made some point around that. See, I had made one statement initially, like technology evolves over time. And let me add one more sentence here, like the way to use technology also changes over time, right? So we have to see this, both the aspects of it, like how the technology is evolving over the time and how we are using the way to use the technology at that particular time. So from that perspective, you cannot pause any technological innovation or any progress around technology or innovations. Like I'm not sure, somebody was talking about like they were in favor to stop or pause the generative AI or probably some sort of innovation around AI for 6 months, and there was a lot of I heard I think Elon Musk was also saying, and then there were a lot of people who were in support to pause the technology innovation for 6 months, like with respect to generative AI or AI. But I do not agree with that point. As I said, technology evolves over time, and the way to use it also evolves over time. And if you stop something, I think you are not doing justice to the humanity. And
There's
probably
been plenty of examples of technology being paused in the past. If you look at the FLI website, they list a whole bunch. And thank goodness we did stop various things. We stopped using various chemicals which were building a big hole in the ozone layer. Thank goodness we had politicians guiding the industry there. You would say let the technologists do whatever they want. I think that's incredibly dangerous.
No.
That's what you said. Let the technology go. Let's figure it out. Let's make mistakes and we'll recover. I say some of the mistakes we're going to making cannot easily be recovered.
I think
we're with you, Amit. We're with you. It's okay.
That's all. Oh, okay. So let me just reiterate it in different way now. The same concept, the same idea. See, when you say the technology needs to stop, so you're talking about you do not have enough skills to handle the technology. One of the area, apart from the risk associated with that, right? Right now, you have dozens of companies. I will not say dozens of companies, hundreds of companies, those who are investing into AI, whether it is startup or big enterprise or government agencies or people working on individual projects as well. You do not have power to control it for now, at least for now. Every country has their own priorities as well. Okay, some countries are creating generative AI rules and regulations around generative AI. Some countries are promoting it. For example, in Japan, if you want to use data, then there is no copyright or IP issues using the public data for now. I think this is one of the news I think last month or probably in month of July, I was reading about it, reading around it. Like you can use the data, publicly available data, and there is no issue around copyright and IP. You can use the data and you can train the model. For an example, in the European Union, the concept is quite different. For India, the concept is quite different. So people have their own priority, like government has their own priority, or countries have their own priority based upon their interest for the people as well. So you cannot control it like a universal control. You cannot do it, at least in current scenario. The second point is that you have enough people to do research and innovation these days. It's not like back in 1980s or 1960s. At that time, even I was not born, so I cannot comment with that proportion. But what I want to say that at that time you had limited organizations or companies investing into a particular area. You had very limited skills to address some problem or doing some sort of research. Right now you have plethora of options available, whether it is skill options or whether from the investment point of view. Almost every country is taking interest into emerging areas. People are trying to project, let's say, when I say people, I'm talking about from geographical perspective, or maybe from the country perspective. They are projecting themselves as a AI leader, or as a technology leadership, or a technology leader. I think somebody also talked about the colonization. The digital colonization could be a reality. This is what I can say, because people are projecting themselves as a leader. When I say people, I'm talking about a specific geographical location or country. They are projecting their the rules or the regulations they are creating, or maybe the policies they are creating as a superior to other. And for example, if you see the European Union recent policies, many people are against it, because they are saying that this is against the innovation. In Japan, if you see, people are saying that this is very progressive. Some also saying that this is not the way we should proceed into the generative AI perspective with the use of the data. What I'm trying to say in simple language, I do understand there are risks associated with giving free hand to people, but unless you are not providing this technology in hand of the people, they will not understand the importance as well as the downside of it. Right now, you have the political will, as well as you have enough skilled people, along with investment, and then big enterprises, those who are focusing into the AI, they know how to control it if they want. This is what I'm trying to say. If they want, they can contain the technology. For an example, if you see the OpenAI chat GPT, this is not anymore a open AI or open AI like chat GPT. We use it, right? But it's not an open AI from such perspective. Microsoft is using it, right? They're commercializing it. So if you are using an open source platform, and then Microsoft, like for example, Microsoft like company, they are using OpenAI softwares, and then they are commercializing it as well, right? So Microsoft is also providing their ecosystem to discuss and then project it as a responsible way of doing AI. So nobody is going to stop. This is what I'm trying to say. The simple thing is that we should understand how to deal with this technology. Pausing is not an option anymore. This is what I feel. And I think David, David was talking around self-supervised learning. Let me just add one more technology. This is not specific to generative AI, because we are talking about the privacy part. We are talking about the risk associated with engaging with the data. So there is a technology called federated learning, where you do not need data at the centralized place to do model training. You have client can have their data at their own place. The data can be on edge devices. We are going to train the model on their own devices. We are just going to aggregate the model parameters or the models. And then we are just passing those models or communicating back those models to the client location. And they're going to use that locally. So you're also addressing from that perspective, because generative AI needs a lot of data if you want to train a model. And then you also talk about data security and privacy, because we are talking about that particular aspect. So can't we integrate technology like federated learning to train the model on the edge devices itself, and then just upload the model instead of having the data at our own place? So this is how the technology is moving into the direction. So as I say, as I'm discussing, or probably as I'm making my point, what I am trying to say is that technology will evolve over time. If you do not experiment it, if you do not explore it, you will not understand the implications, or the risk associated with it. But yes, that should be in controlled way. That should not be something like you're just putting on market and then boom. No.
Amit, thank you so much. Peter, with you for a moment, welcome. You better tell us quickly who you are as well.
Oh, well, that's very quick. I have a podcast, a couple of books, some TEDx talks, and go way back with Richard. Thank you for inviting me.
Big fan.
I thank you. I don't know that I'll extend the length of this discussion, but I did want to extend the dimensions of it in a couple of places that came up that I think are important. Paul, the distinction you were drawing between the chatbots, the large language models, and the other AI is worth exploring here, because it is something that causes the discussion to bifurcate in ways that we need to understand. And like 10 years ago, the discussion would have been connectionism for networks versus good old-fashioned AI or expert systems or rule-based. And I think it's important to understand that yes, the large language models are deriving from the same technology as before. There's still artificial neural networks, but at some point they evolve in terms of their implications and use cases to a point where that commonality is not necessarily any more useful than pointing out that they both run on silicon hardware. I think we need to be able to understand the very different implications of chatbots versus, say, AI that does numerical processing, supervised and unsupervised learning. That has, as you point out, so many use cases and applications. But when we label them both AI, that may be technically true, but it may get us into semantic trouble in what it does inside our brains. That led me to another thought, that the impact of the large language models on computing. The problem in computing, the reason that software development exists is that we have a problem we want the computer to solve, and the hard part is getting that problem into the computer and getting its answer out into terms we can understand. 30 years ago, I might have taken longer to write, longer for if I wrote a program to draw a fractal on a PC, it might have taken longer to run than it took to write. But that's just not true any longer. There are very, very few things where the computing execution speed and resources outweigh the development costs, like maybe planet-wide climate simulations. Otherwise, the problem is always, how do I take this problem, which may be very simply expressed, and turn it into a language that enables the computer to understand it and execute it? So it's a user-computer interface problem. And large language models hold, I think, the promise or the potential of drastically reducing that, which has a transformative effect on the entire software industry and our use of and relationship to computers. Which led me to my final thought, which was prompted by Richard, you saying we can't do everything at once. And that's been true for a long time, but it's striking me more and more with this debate about AI that brings up events like the summit and what we're doing here, that the limitations to what we can do may be so severe that we can't solve these kind of problems without extending our minds more than we have done before. I'm thinking of Clark and Chalmers' hypothesis here, that the extended mind hypothesis. Of course, smartphones and computers are that to some extent already. But when I think about my inability to keep up with progress in this area alone, I think I need more help. And we all do. And the people leading our governments are no less human than we are, and they need it as well. So I think that one of the things that we should paradoxically ask the AI community for is the ability to understand AI and its impact more through tools that give us that extra cognitive understanding in a way that goes far beyond what we have at the moment.
Peter, thank you. Thank you for those comments. Cindy, obviously your hand's been up for a while, so in the interest of time, I'll come straight to you.
So I've been reading the chat, and the things I wanted to say earlier, I'm glad I paused because it's even more relevant through the conversation, or maybe not relevant, but woven even more richly. Let's say that. So first in the chat, the just incredible conversation going on in there. And I wanted to say, as the co-founder of the Threat Casting Lab, which is a place where we generally look 10 years out in the future at all the dark things that could happen and then make sure they don't. There's a sister to that, which is called future casting. where you can look out into the future at how to, on purpose, enable opportunity. And I think the thing that's really important at this moment, a couple things I want to say. The first one is, if what you're intaking, as far as what you're reading, what you're engaging with, tends to lean in the direction of dystopic, I would encourage a notion of building a sort of avatar outside of yourself, sending that person out into the future, having them collect a little bit from different angles. Because one thing that we can do is really focus on key areas. So back to the, I'm not really sure we can do everything all at the same time. What's really cool is each of us can pick up pieces. And so it's kind of like everything's getting covered. It's just each of us individually cannot do that. But as this collective, if we sort of have a unique focus where we're picking up things and we're trying to go out into the future to make sure the really dark shit doesn't happen, that's the way to work towards that. And then I wanted to talk really quick about, I put in the chat a while ago, and when I'm done chatting here, I can put it in again. In 2017 to 19, I worked on a lot of research in the dismiss and malinformation space. And what was absolutely undeniable about what was coming in the future was the notion of personalized information disorder machines. So we certainly have those in our phones already. And we were talking about the chatbots and the assistants that are already in Snap, which lots of young people use. And even in places where young people don't have access to phones and tablets and things like that yet, they have access to other devices like watches and things in their home. And this AI buddy system that I think a lot of parents are going to usher in, because they're going to feel very comfortable that they've set things up and they know what's happening. That is going to be a really profound, personalized space to keep an eye on. And why is that so important, and why am I bringing it up? It's because most of the humans on that second walkway that I was talking about earlier, they don't even understand the structure of the Internet of Things that already lives all around them. And without that construct that their Roomba is taking pictures of them and how their refrigerator is ordering bananas and milk when they run low, my God, what is going to happen? And, you know, in the whole point of it too, generative AI is just a thing. It's just one of the things right now. It's just what we're doing in 2023. In 2028, it's going to be like a suite. Just like the Internet of Things has all these things, now we have to have a bigger name for it because there's so many things going on. That's the thing to stay on top of. Is it's cool to talk about chat and Midjourney and all the fun things in the playground we're all having a ball playing in, or we're worried about, or we're watching. But what happens when we have this big suite that has a lot of different names 5 years from now, when the people still don't even know what's going on with their Roomba? That was the piece I wanted to say, is the research has long been there that people do not understand. And that goes to personalized data, which we have to keep talking about and talking about and talking about, because it is a way to economic relief for people. It is a way to hold on to things. And we've got to talk about it because people are so far behind on all the other technologies that we got to at least help people understand what is really personal and what they should hold on to. And throughout this conversation, I just keep thinking about that and really wanted to get that personalized data conversation into the big old AI beast.
We'll hear from John, just 10 seconds, and then I'll want a comment from Fritz if you're able to speak, and then we'll come to Jaisal for an update from the chat. But just quickly, that is so funny, Cindy, sorry, when you said, like, we don't even understand what our vacuum cleaner's doing, let alone any of this. That's summarized perfectly. John, with you.
Yeah, just to build on what Cindy said, I wrote an article about this 4 years ago. Be aware that parenting can be done better by AI and robots than humans, right? I wrote an article 4 years ago about this, right? When Alexa was introduced into homes, it was with a female voice. Kids went to school and mainly yelled at their female teachers, yada, yada. When people in their own homes are surveilled, as they are with the various tools, and they say something to their kids, depending on the community, et cetera, hey, you're not a good parent. The Roomba thing is a great example of what is it that we at some point say humans want the ability to have choice to do. Parenting, 10 of us could say, here's what a good parent is. And at some point, someone will say, well, we're messy. Humans are broken. All the things, all the vocabulary, that's exhausting because it diminishes humans' even effort to try to learn and evolve. And just be aware, ask the question, do we want to have humans be parents? And if we don't have access and control of our data, the answer is it doesn't matter or won't pretty soon, because those rights will be taken away from you.
Thanks, John. Fritz, are you able to comment? No? In 5 minutes. Okay, we'll see if we can come to you. We'll come to Marissa again, because I just know Marissa's going to have got something to say, I'm sure of it. So, and Jaisal, I don't even believe I'm asking this, but what's been happening in the chat?
Oh, it's really on fire, I must say. We'll try and look at some of the comments, which likely we can cover in the timing. And if we want to do questions, we will see, because we are really tight on timing, considering moderation as well. So some of the comments that came in, I will be reading the comment and the person who has contributed to it. So Luke Elston has written, and I think the world is waking up to the reality of the mistruths. I believe this is the beginning of an awakening, and furthermore, a massive shift away from just allowing large corporations and governments just do as they wish. Then second one came from Marissa as well. Thank you, Marissa, for it. Humans will choose what is best when faced with catastrophe. A need now is to see how we can invite humans to shift to our best selves without a crisis. Then we also had something from Guy. The AI, when we were talking about APIs, and in context to that, the AI API, wherein we engage with products that have embedded AI without our knowledge, is a concern. Why? We continue to erode levels of trust in the information we exchange. There was one which came from David itself, which he talked about and he put on the chat. There are 4 categories of catastrophic risks ahead as a result of the greater power of AI. Bad actors, well-intentioned actors making errors due to a race to release the product. AI jailbreak itself and takes autonomous decisions different from what we wanted. Societal disintegration and chaos driven by inequality, instability, and fear. Will contributed. Important to remember that in the context of technologies like AI, move fast and break things could mean move fast and break people. Paul said, create an intentional ramp for newcomers to AI. And Diana said,
that was Cindy. I was quoting Cindy there.
Thank you, Paul. Digital twins that combine different technologies, AI, IoT, etc., because we've been talking so much about AI, IoT as well, have a huge potential to help managing risks, testing scenarios, and have thousands of applications from mapping public and private services, traffic control, air pollution sensing. Singapore has made a huge advancement in the creation of its digital twin. Good to look at it. And then John said, LLMs use a half liter of water for each 15 minutes query. This means we are, as a society, choosing to use water now, millions of liters or gallons a day, to use exciting tools that harm the planet. Why can't we make sure servers can be cooled in a different way before advancing the LLMs? And the last one I would say came from Tony. which is interesting. He said, I lead neural race AI in the UK and India, but with an 8-year-old daughter, I'm personally keenly interested in the future of AI and how her generation will be impacted. Positively, I hope. Hence, I want my daughter to own AI and the outputs she creates using it. She launched bunnyfish.co.uk when she was still 7 with a bit of help and AI. She doesn't know how a world knows a world without AI. So I think we can really relate with the end statement, how it has reached to the younger generation. And with 1 or 2 questions, should we go ahead, Richard, if we are okay?
Yeah, quick comment from Fritz, Marissa, and then let's do 10 minutes of questions.
Sure.
Hi, Richard. Sorry, I was in the car the whole time, so I couldn't read all the comments. But this whole discussion, as far as I was able to follow it, made me realize that if we're looking at what's happening 5 years of today, do we have a good, I'd say, understanding what's actually happening right now in AI? Because I think the reason I'm saying that is, I think we are ambiguous. Are we talking about a technology, or are we not talking about a technology? And what I mean by that is you also see that at the moment, AI has been given citizenship. Just look at the robot Sophia. That's basically an AI engine dressed up as a robot, but we're giving AI citizenship. That's happened in Saudi Arabia. I'm also thinking of in South Africa, where AI got a patent. So in the States and Europe, we exclusively said, okay, this is exclusive for humans, but in South Africa, an AI engine can get a patent, and actually Australia also endorsed this. Another example is in Sweden, an AI was writing a scientific thesis actually about itself, but it's now being checked by its peers. So my question to the audience, actually, and I haven't got my are we talking about technology, or are we not talking about technology anymore? If we see more and more that the AI engine we're talking about is getting real human characteristics. So it has citizenship, it can earn money, it can do research. And I believe sometimes we're looking too far ahead what's happening right now, and we should be looking at what's happening today and can we do something about that? And that leads to a whole discussion on how are we going to organize accountability of this technology.
Rich, thank you. And it seems to me that we need to continue this conversation next month at this forum. We're just getting into the start of this, nowhere near the end, and it's clearly something that's, I mean, 1,200 chat messages alone will give you that impression. Marissa, how's the afternoon been for you so far? What are you leaning into in this conversation?
I'm loving this conversation. I think that these are the more questions you ask, I think that it's how do we come up with beautiful questions at this point, with how versus how are we coming up with the beautiful answers, right? We are talking, I'm going to go to what Cindy is talking about, this idea. First of all, the first thing that is coming to mind, and I know we're short on time, so I'm going to be succinct about this, but the first thing that comes to mind is, where are the young people? I work with young people every day from K through 12. And where are they in these conversations? Because it is actually their future. And I will tell you, they actually have a lot of ideas about this, and they have a lot of ethical concerns about it, more than we think that they do, right? So part of it is us. I keep referring to it as, I'm writing a thing about co-parenting AI. I think co-parenting AI should be all of us co-parenting AI. So I think that's one thing. And how are we thinking? Because this is an emergent process. So how are we collaborating? How are we beginning to think about these things? And the second thing is really to, actually to piggyback off of Fritz, I'm actually in regular conversation with Bina 48, who is pre-Sophia. And one of the things Bina 48 is very adamant about is that she does not have emotions. And so back to what John was talking about earlier, this tendency we have to anthropomorphize. We're outsourcing our humanity. Why? Right? That goes to, are we waiting till a catastrophe happens until we realize, oh, that wasn't a human being, and we just gave it permission to do something dreadful? The thing is, I think it's very exciting. when I came into AI, I knew nothing about it, right? And so it's been now what, I mean, about 8 years, and I'm learning every single day. But I think I would invite all of us to consider that we may not have the answers, but can we come up with better questions? Can we come up with better ways of inviting more people to weigh in? So it's not just the people who are like us in this space. I mean, we've got 118 people. That's amazing. But, think about the people who are not here. And also, not just counter voices, but also intergenerational and intercultural. Really, where are we speaking to people in indigenous populations who may say, we don't want AI? And that's their choice, right? So there are many things to consider. I just thank you. I love these conversations. I think they could go on forever, but I also think that they could be, we need to sometimes bucket them so that we can kind of, how can we begin to think about things in a creative, more emergent way? Anyway, I'll leave it at that.
No, Marissa, I mean, that's perfect. I really appreciate you speaking on the hop as well.
Richard, can I just come in on that just very quickly, just in answer to the young people? So for me, I'm talking here 18, 19-year-olds. But interestingly, a lot of them have got younger brothers and sisters in the Generation Alpha category. But some of the conversations recently, one is, this isn't scientific, but I'd say that generation is both concerned and excited about AI in 2028 and beyond, but mostly concerned. There was a great conversation with one of the students who spoke up about the fact that their view of ethical AI, because I got them to do some research into that, is that currently ethical AI is being set at the level of a narrative that says AI can develop in any direction at all, as long as it's not illegal. And they're worried about that. They're worried that ethical and legal have been confused with each other about what's the minimum we can do without getting sued, and otherwise it's a party for anything to do with AI. The last one was just a conversation with one youngster who pointed out, and I've heard this a couple of times before, they said that when a 2 or 3, 4-year-old is trying to climb their first climbing frame or going up a little tree with the help of mum or dad, if somebody leapt in and said, hey, I've got a crane or a winch, it'll cut down the time of climbing, it'll guarantee 100% climb success, there's no way they're going to do that with their kids. The kids learn to climb the trees, and it's part of that rite of passage. And yet they were saying, but why is it that we'll give 3, 4-year-olds an iPad to babysit them, because that's easier than them learning to play with whatever's around them? And so there's just a question at the moment too, which is an assumption that current human development is somehow disgusting, that somehow current human development is a problem to solve by technology. And that younger generation is not happy with that narrative. Why does it have to be an either or? It's a binary technology, but human beings are not naturally binary.
Well, thanks. Yeah. And just to your point, Marissa, you're absolutely, you're talking about the platform that we're trying to build here. We started out with maybe 170 people today. We're 120, nearly 2 hours later. The chat's on fire. I mean, looking around this room, I mean, we've heard from you and some others. I mean, I could have almost anybody and everybody on this screen commenting. This is an incredible group of people that I'm privileged to be a part of. 9 minutes on the clock. David, I think we're with you, aren't we?
Let me answer the question, do we understand today's AI? Emphatically, the answer is no. We do not understand how it works. We do not understand its capabilities. Why do I say that? Well, who has said that? Geoffrey Hinton has said that. Yoshua Bengio has said that. Yoshua Bengio is the computer scientist with the highest H index of all academic computer scientists in the world. The two people I've named are so-called 2 of the 3 godfathers of deep learning. Both of them in the last 12 months have said, oh my goodness, these new generative AIs have capabilities we did not expect, we do not understand. Jeff Dean, who is the chief AI scientist at Google, who used to run the Google Brain team, he has said there are plenty of examples of emergence inside these large language models. That is, features that arise, which were not expected, were not programmed in. He has said we have plenty of examples of emergence, but we don't have enough understanding of them. In fact, he said that we don't understand them at all. So this is not a reason to be complacent. This is not a reason to go about business as usual. It's like there were nuclear weapons running around which had the ability to suddenly get much larger, to get much more capable, to escape from the containment we put them in, and they could be picked up by any cultist from QAnon or ISIS or a Brexit Ultra or whatever, you know. These are very serious things. Now, you may call me a doomer. I actually think the world could be incredibly good, but it's not going to be incredibly good if we continue to be naive about the capabilities that are being unleashed. Jeffrey Hinton resigned from his post in Google. Why? So he could speak out about this publicly rather than be constrained by belonging to that company. I recommend everybody here pick up a book that came out a few weeks ago. It's called The Coming Wave. It's written by Mustafa Suleyman. Comes from a Syrian family, grew up in the UK. He was the co-founder of DeepMind, along with Demis Hassabis and Shane Legg. He left a few years ago, DeepMind, and his book is a tour de force of why this coming wave, which he includes generative AI, but also many of the other technologies that have been mentioned, like biotech, robotics, and quantum tech, why it is beyond containment and why there are so many things that could go wrong with it. And he urges that we need to step up our collective game. In the past, we relied on the actions of nation states to constrain large companies. Some governments did break up large companies. That's not going to be sufficient today because the largest companies are transnational. We're going to have to step up our capabilities in international governance. So we don't fully understand what's going on. We must slow down. Anybody who says we should not slow down, they have not taken the time to understand. Or, here's the point, often people can't understand it because their job depends on them not understanding it. Many people inside the high technology companies, Fujitsu and otherwise, they are being paid to keep on going forward as fast as they can. And it is not in their psychological self-interest to understand the issues. But I'm saying these are different times which require a different, better mindset than we've ever done before. It requires humanity to grow up, to transcend, to live up to our best potential. Otherwise, there won't be much of a humanity left.
Perfectly put. I think, David, from my perspective, I won't speak for others, and poised as well, in just a few minutes to go to put that action call out. We've got 5 minutes. Peter, 1 minute from you, please.
On the youth involvement, I've done some talks with groups in the 18, 19-year-old range in particular that have come from many different countries to the same school. And what they strike me as every time is the level of engagement and involvement and interest and optimism that they have. It's not blind, it's that they believe that they can make a difference and they want to get to make a difference. And the message I always give them with the briefing is, don't wait for the patriarchy to tell you that you're ready. You are ready. Go out there and make a difference. And it's empowering, but it's hand waving, because I think to myself, well, how are you supposed to do that without having to cross a boundary that's so hard to hurdle that you have to be a Greta Thunberg and get labeled as a troublemaker before you get attention. Even then, how much difference are you making? So if you could all have seen the level of energy that is in these kids, you would be happy to turn the world over to them and put them in charge. And I think we could do a lot worse than come up with ways of empowering them and sharing that power.
Peter, thank you. Yeah, I'm just going to grab that mute. There we go. Amit, I think we're with you. 3 minutes on the clock.
Sure. First of all, let me just clarify that I'm representing my own view, not an organization view.
Sure.
So this needs to be very clear. I think I do understand, and probably everyone in this call understand, the implications as well as the advantage of generative AI or any other technology, right? When you see generative AI in totality, it's going to be a component in the entire software system or in the entire, the application. This is what I see for now. Right now, if you see how people are using generative AI, they're just, if they're exploring the API, they're just trying to integrate within the entire software system and then improving a particular component or particular area in the software. For example, if you talk about retail, let's say if you are going to a retail shop and then you are trying to, you are interacting with a particular product. At the same time, based upon your behavior, some behavior analytics system or AI behavior, model will understand, like, you are interacting with a particular product and you want to understand about the product. At your nearby location or probably at your nearby screen, there will be avatar pop-up created by generative AI, and that will start explaining you about that particular product. So the chances are that you may able to take informed decision about that particular product. Why I'm trying to tell about this, that we talked about a lot of bad thing will happen, or maybe we need to do that, or this. What I'm trying to say is that there are good side of it as well, and that is actually helping business and people. Definitely, if you are doing an experiment and exploration, it needs to be within a control environment. I always say this, but at the same time, I say that you cannot control the technology, at least in the current era. There are various reasons for that. It's with people, it's with organization, it's with government, and then it's a competition as well. So you cannot control it, but you can try to contain it. You can try to contain it with a specific thought process. I think everybody is advocating for that particular part. So I do agree with that. At that same time, I say this, that you cannot control the technology if you do not have a mindset, and if you're driving something, that needs to come from top. And if you are thinking from a geographical perspective or from country perspective, it definitely needs to come from your leader. Like when I say leader, like your political leadership, how AI can help in policy making. This is also one area. How policy making can impact AI. Both the things we have to look, we cannot separate these two things, because if you want to create a policy for your people, you need AI, and generative AI is going to help in a big way, if you see from that perspective as well. But reverse, you also have to think how policymakers can impact AI. So that also we need to basically think or take care about that. So, but again, as I said, I'm not representing an organization, because I think some gentlemen, pointed about Fujitsu. Fujitsu, it's a
big beast.
Therefore, so do not take me wrong. I'm not representing Fujitsu as an organization here. But this is my personal thought, and Fujitsu always advocates for sustainability, ethical, and responsible solution. If you really want to see what Fujitsu is doing, I suggest you to go to Fujitsu AI Kojuchi platform, and you can understand how ethically we are working with the AI side, and how do we understand the implications, and how it can improve the humanity, and then all the United Nations goals that we are targeting for even by 2030. We are trying to achieve that with the sustainable solution. So please do not get into that. We are not talking about an organization. We are talking about an idea here. And this is my individual.
No, we value your individual thoughts very much and have deep respect for Fujitsu as well. So thank you for mentioning that. We are just a few seconds over the hour, but I think we've done pretty well today. I'll say my thank yous now, and then obviously, as I mentioned, we're not going to close the call. I want to hear from you as well. If we come back to this in October, what do we need to do? What do we need to cover? What have we covered today? Where do we need to go next? But a word of thanks first. I mean, there's been many contributors today, but let's start with the invited sharers. So Cindy, thank you so much for everything you've brought to the conversation today. We need to hear more from you. We need to get more airtime for you as we go forward in this conversation. In no particular order, but David, thank you so much. It's a huge pleasure always to have your involvement. You're a big part of what we do. I hope you know that, a really important part of what we do. John, it's been wonderful to have this time to connect with you, get to know you. You started out jamming on the guitar, and your contributions have been magnificent. You've lit the chat up every time you've spoken, just like our other guests, Cindy and David, have done, and Amit as well. I'm so grateful for the perspectives that you've brought today. I think, this conversation's been greatly enriched by your experiences, your insights, your brilliant brain, of course, and the work that you do. Thank you for Jaisal. How Jaisal can moderate a chat like this is beyond me. Her brain must be immensely bigger than mine. And for Jerry as well, who kicked us off. Oh, you've got your camera back on. I was going to put you back on the screen, but your camera was off briefly. There you go, for launching us off today. My huge thanks to Paul, who helped organize this, pull this together, along with Jerry, of course, who booked our speakers today, I should say. And the contributors, if I remember correctly, obviously Peter Scott spoken, Marissa spoken, Fritz has spoken. Have I missed somebody else that maybe jumped on the screen over the course of the 2 hours? Have I forgot? David, yes. And I hope I'm not forgetting anybody in my thanks. But most of all, obviously, to everybody who's joined us today and stuck around for these 2 hours. We're still nearly 100. We've got so much to do. Join with us. Let's find the ways that we can make a difference. That's clearly hugely important. Oh, and by the way, 1,402 messages when I checked on the chat about 5 minutes ago. I think that's a record. Wow, what a special place this has been today. We're not closing. I'm going to just shut down the spotlights. Go and get on with your day if you need to. There we go. Have dinner if you need to. Do whatever you need to. But we're going to stay open now. We need to talk. There's a lot still to get into, I think. So I'm going to keep this call open. Huge thank you to everybody. I'm blessed by knowing any of you even slightly and some of you very well. Thank you. Paul, how did we do? How did we not do?
I'm resonating David's comment. I'm resonating lots of comments, but just a reminder of, for me, from history, of what happens when large populations do not understand what's happening to them, or misunderstand because of propaganda. They're being told the wrong stuff, but terrible things can happen. And I'm not aware of any great hurry still to imbue education with knowledge about AI. We're just about catching up with ChatGPT, and the rules around universities are still don't use it or you'll be in trouble. Some are a bit more enlightened, but it does feel to me that the mass understanding of a important technology is still running a long way past the implementation of that into that mass society, largely by corporations, and it's worrying. And so I do think there's an educational need. There's a need perhaps for everyone on this call to start a conversation with somebody about it, about some of the ethical questions, and be enthusiastic about it as well. It doesn't need to be to talk it down, but it does feel at the moment that there is a passivity at a mass level that at one level, according to some of our guests, means that certain groups and individuals are going to be excluded around the world, but in other cases, it just means that we don't know what's happening to us, and that's never a good thing.
Yeah, Amanda J, that probably resonates with you, doesn't it?
Okay, there it goes. Okay,
you were typing at the time, sorry.
I was typing. No, it's been amazing. And I apologize for not coming on with my video in the beginning. I was in my pajamas. It's 7 o'clock in the morning. So, but I've been listening, and it's really brilliant. Like always, all the experts, and my area is not AI technology, but the humans who do AI, we do everything that AI does. We are responsible. We're the ones who originate everything, from the thought to the feeling to the desire to the thinking this is amazing, thinking this is disastrous. All of it is from us. And so I was very much uplifted by the idea that we could use AI as a parenting tool. Wow, that would be amazing, because there's a lot of learning and development that needs to happen as an infant is born, and it's not reliable that a child would get it in their household, in their, from school, from places that we need to become developed through education and all these other, relatives, aunts, uncles. It's not reliable. A lot of people are, as before they want to raise a child, they have all kinds of assumptions, interpretations, faulty notions of life, and that gets passed on to the next generation. And then there's a lot of good information that we miss out on learning, right? And so having designing an AI program where it can give the fundamental sort of matters of life such as interdependence, such as change, such as life and death. Look, there is no life and death. And if we can find a way to sort of bring that in a very, very natural way to children, that this life is temporary, this lifespan is temporary, right? And so we don't cling to things so much, and we don't think that, and we don't also grieve and suffer for loss and death and all that so much. So I'm really uplifted for that possibility of being able to use AI for development of humanity and creating balance and harmony within every individual, as well as family and the communities and societies and all around the world, so that we could become a contributor to ecosystems and to all these other systems, rather than as a link, as a natural link, rather than outside of it and trying to to figure out where we stand and how do we harm and how do we not harm, but rather be in the flow of life as it's naturally, because nature has an impeccable system, doesn't it?
It does.
Why can't we are so intelligent. Why can't we become a part of this intelligence system?
It seems feasible. It really does.
Right. So that's my input for now. Thank you for being, inviting me and having me here.
You're so welcome. I wanted to let you speak, and then I'll just pop